everybody. This is Miss Nicole with my latest edition of Science Bytes at Bloomfield Public Library. And today we are talking about ultraviolet light, also known as UV light. And we have a nifty way we can sort of look at ultraviolet light using color changing beads. And actually, this is a perfectly timed Science Bytes because as you can see, I got a little bit too much color outside, as they say. I was at a ball game in Boston, and I think I did put on sunscreen, but I think I probably sweated it all off. So I'm a little bright in the face right now. But this is the perfect time to talk to you about UV light and how it impacts us. So what is ultraviolet light? Again, also known as UV light. So I'll probably refer to it as UV light. All of us have seen a rainbow before, right? So in a rainbow, we see lots of different colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet, also known as purple. And ultraviolet light is actually the light that's beyond purple. And the reason we don't talk about it when we talk about rainbows is because we cannot see it with our human eyes. It is not visible to us. The light waves for ultraviolet light are much shorter and quicker than regular light waves, so we can't actually see the ultraviolet. Even though humans can't see ultraviolet light, that doesn't mean that all living things can't see it. There are some animals and insects and birds that can actually see ultraviolet light. One example of those is a bee. A bee can actually see the ultraviolet light spectrum, and there are flowers that have actually adapted to reflect ultraviolet light so that it draws the bees, and the bees can see exactly where the pollen is using their ultraviolet vision, which is pretty cool, right? There are actually 3 kinds of ultraviolet light rays, and they refer to them as ultraviolet C, B, and A. Ultraviolet C rays are the most harmful and the most deadly. We almost would never come in contact with those because there are all sorts of protections in place for ultraviolet C rays. Ultraviolet B rays, however, are sort of like a mid-length ultraviolet ray, and that's what creates a sunburn. Those are rays that normally would get absorbed by the atmosphere, but with global warming, a lot more of those ultraviolet rays at the B level are sneaking through, and that's how we get a sunburn. And then there are ultraviolet A rays, which we come in contact with all the time. Those are just part of the light that's outside and the light that's around us, and they really don't do any harm. So how does an ultraviolet ray give us something like a sunburn? Human beings have actually adapted to their environments very well. You may have noticed that different people have different skin colors. Some people have very dark skin, some people have very light skin. And that's actually an adaptation to ultraviolet light and the rays that come down to us from the sun. So for example, people living in Africa get exposed to a much stronger version of sunlight in ultraviolet than we do in Connecticut. So that's why you see a lot of people in Africa have much darker skin. Those darker pigments in their skin actually help to absorb that extra ultraviolet light and prevent it from getting deeper into their cells. Because if it gets past the skin layer, then you actually get some damage to the cells within your body. And that's what a burn is. So what happened with my sunburn is that the ultraviolet light actually got past my own skin pigments, past my sunblock, and actually got below that layer of my skin and actually did some damage to the cells underneath. And that's why your parents are always making you wear sunscreen, because nobody wants to damage their body. So when people get suntans or they burn, all that changing in color is actually evidence that those ultraviolet rays have snuck below that top layer of their skin and are actually affecting the cells underneath. So that's why we wear sunscreen. And that leads me to what we are going to do today with our color changing beads. We are going to actually test how well our sunscreen works, how well whatever sunscreen we have at home works. And how does sunscreen work? Well, when we spread that lotion on us or spray it on us, the sunscreen, it doesn't actually block the UV light from getting under our skin. What it does is it actually absorbs the UV light and the UV rays. So if you had a suntan lotion, like mine right here, says that it's SPF 50. So that tells me how effective it's saying it's going to be. You might have something that says SPF 15 at home or SPF 30. Those are less effective than something that says it's 50 or 100. There are some that are more effective even. So that's telling us how well it's going to absorb the UV rays and prevent them from getting under our skin. So the demonstration we're going to do today with a few simple items from home is going to show us how much UV light our sunscreen is going to block. And if you have a couple that are at different levels, that's great, and you can compare all of them together. I just have this one, so I'm going to do a comparison between my sunscreen with the beads and a control, what we call a control. So I'm going to do something that doesn't have any way of blocking the UV from the beads, so we can see how bright they would just naturally get with the UV light. Our project is very simple. You just need a few supplies from home and the color changing bead kit that we have at both of our library locations. Here's what we're going to do. What you need is some sort of clear baggie. I have snack size baggies, so they're shorter, which is perfect because we're not going to use a lot of beads. But if you only have the full size sandwich ones at home, that's okay too. So you need a baggie, you need some kind of marker, because we want to label our baggies, and you need some sort of sunscreen or suntan lotion. This is kind of a fun one to do if you have a couple different levels of sunscreen at home. I only have this one, so I'm going to do just this one. And this is a demonstration where we are going to use what we call a control in science. So we are going to put we're going to have two baggies, and we're going to put some beads in one baggie and some beads in the other. And we're only going to spread sunscreen on one baggie. The other baggie is going to stay completely normal, and we're going to let those beads get affected by the sun in a completely natural way. There's going to be nothing blocking it. And that will show us, when we compare the two, how effective that sunscreen is. Because we'll see how bright the beads are in our control, and then what level of brightness the beads actually turn out to be from underneath the sunscreen. We'll see how much UV that sunscreen is blocking from those beads. These color changing beads change color because there's actually a chemical embedded in the plastic that reacts to UV light or UV ultraviolet light. And when those rays hit the beads, when those UV rays hit the beads, they activate that color in the bead and make it change color. So the first thing you want to do is label your baggies, and that's what our marker is for. So I have, again, a sunscreen that's 50 SPF. So I'm going to write that on my baggie. I'm just going to write 50 SPF right on the baggie. If you can see it. It's hard to see, but there you go. If I put my hand behind it, 50 SPF. And if you had 30, you would write 30 SPF. Or if you have a couple different kinds, make sure you write the different kinds on the different baggies. Then what you're going to do is put just a few of your beads in there. If you're doing it like me and you just are testing one sunscreen, then put about half of your beads into the bag. I'm going to do that. Whoops. Like so. I've got about half of my beads in that bag. And now we're going to flip it upside down because we don't want to mess with our labels. So we're going to flip it upside down, and I'm going to spread some sunscreen on it. And let me show you how we're going to do that. So I'm going to actually shake the beads down towards the zippered part so I leave some of this clear. And you really only need a little bit of sunscreen. Just a dab will do you. So I just have a little dab there. And you're going to use your finger and just spread it across the whole bag and try and get all the corners. I'm actually doing this on a plate because then I don't have to worry about accidentally getting sunscreen on my table. So just spread, 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 spread. And this part you'll have to be a little patient with. You'll have to now let this dry. So now that I have spread the sunscreen, we're gonna let that dry. Now, once it's dry, all you need to do is put it in the sun at the same time that you put a control baggie in the sun. So I also labeled a second baggie, control, put my hand behind it so you can see it. And again, this is the baggie that we don't want to put any suntan lotion on it. All you're going to do is put the beads in and seal it up, and you're done. Now, if you were testing more than one sunscreen at the same time and you had a lot of different baggies, just make sure that each time you spread the sunscreen on a baggie, you go and wash your hands with soap and water. And that's the best way to be fair, because you don't want to mix up your sunscreens on your finger and be spreading more than one kind of sunscreen on the same baggie. And I tried to take a picture of what it looked like when I did the demonstration out in the sun. It was so bright that it was hard to actually see it and photograph it. So I do have this picture that shows you how mine came out. Maybe a little hard to see. It's easier to see it in person with your own eyes. But it happens very quickly, so you won't have to be in the sun too long. It's very hot these days. This is a terrific demonstration to just show you how well your sunscreen or your sunblock is actually working. And you may or may not know this, but sunscreen does have a shelf life, which means it expires. It's not good forever. So really, we're supposed to be buying sunscreen every summer season. Once a year, you should be buying new sunscreen. If you are using sunscreen that you've had in your house for 2, 3, 4 years, it may not be as effective as it once was. So you may think you're using 50 SPF or 100 SPF, but it may be acting more like 15 SPF. So using these beads is actually kind of a fun way to test to see if it's still working the way you think it's working. And you can also take this demonstration further. There are a lot of ways to use these color changing beads to test the presence of ultraviolet rays and how well things block them. Some sunglasses say that they help block ultraviolet rays. So you can try putting some beads in a cup and covering them with a pair of sunglasses, that lens, and see how well it blocks the UV rays. And of course, if it's blocking them, the beads should not become brightly colored. They should be faintly colored. My eyeglasses here, you can actually see they're tinting a little because I'm sitting near a window, are what they call transition lenses. So they're designed to essentially get like a sunglasses kind of look to them when I'm out in the sun to protect my eyes. And I actually know they're kind of doing their job because I was wearing these when I got my sunburn. And if I take them off, you can see how it's lighter around my eyes. I don't have that same burn around my eyes. And that's because my glasses were doing what they were supposed to. They were blocking or absorbing the ultraviolet light rays and preventing them from getting to my skin and under my skin and doing harm. So my glasses are actually doing what they're supposed to. So there's a lot of different things you can test with this. And if you're done with testing and you don't want to test any more objects, this is why I also included the pipe cleaner. You can actually make a fun little bracelet you can wear outside too. So if you've got, they were all different colors. I just have a white one here. All you need to do is take your beads and push them onto the pipe cleaner. And you can put them all on at once. And then to make your bracelet, you're just going to twist or tie off at whatever size makes sense for you. You can also just keep them on, you don't have to wear it as a bracelet. You can just string them up on the pipe cleaner to keep them in one place and to keep them safe so you don't lose track of them. So that's just a little something extra from me to you. So I hope you all enjoy your summer or holiday from school and are all being nice and safe and wearing sunscreen so you don't get burnt like this. So make sure you're putting on lots of sunscreen when you go outside, and I will see you again in the fall with our next Science Bites. Bye for now, everybody.